Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here. Don't forget to subscribe. But today, I want to talk about Amazon. And if you're a longtime listener, follower, radio listener, however you ingest my information, you know that I've talked about Amazon and all of the other big tech ones for years in terms of their sheer egregious violations of our privacy and essentially their overarching sins with us. And so with that, before we get to today's news, let's basically take a quick tour of some of the highlights of the last decade or so of Amazon. And this is by no means complete, but these are some of the interesting ones. And we'll start in 2014 because the FTC alleged that Amazon unlawfully billed parents for millions of dollars in children's unauthorized in-app charges. They didn't have parental controls and kids were going nuts. Back in the day, it still does occasionally happen. Now, how about this in CNN later on, quote, since 2016, at least 1,500 reviews covering more than 70 items have described products exploding, catching on fire, smoking, melting, causing electrical malfunctions, or otherwise posing risks, according to an analysis of Amazon Basics electronics and appliances listed on its website. In other words, they were essentially creating shoddy things and selling them to everybody. And on top of it, courts in India have essentially concluded that Amazon did indeed essentially rip off designers and makers when they were selling well, because Amazon had access to the back-end sales data to see what shirt, what exploding device, whatever was working good, and then essentially make it for cheaper and essentially prioritize it in their searches. Now in 2017, a warrant from the police in Arkansas sought audio records of a man, essentially his Amazon Echo, over a case that was known as the Hot Tub Murder. Essentially, what we were really underscoring is always on devices, and the Amazon Echo apparently caught a lot of this there simply because it was there, it was on, and it was recording. Now, others like Apple, Google, etc. have always on mics, but it really underscores these things are listening, and they have to be listening for their trigger words. In 2019, essentially there was an article by the EFF entitled Amazon's Ring is a Perfect Storm of Privacy Threats. If you know my history with Amazon and Ring doorbell, absolutely, they were playing fast and loose, essentially with Ring doorbell. They were letting police go in, essentially, and an article from 2019 also confirmed that, because according to Forbes, police can request the footage directly from Amazon if it has been uploaded to Amazon's cloud, and the request is sent within 60 days of that recording, even if you deny police access to that footage. Now, separately, Amazon is also training police on how to talk citizens into handing over their footage, according to Vice by Motherboard, or Motherboard by Vice. So this obviously is a huge, huge thing. Also in 2019, CBS News reported that Amazon employs thousands of workers who listen to voice recordings captured by the Echo smart speaker devices in your home, and that's according to a report from Bloomberg. Their job essentially is to transcribe these recordings and annotate them. And for the record, if you think they're Americans, they're all over the place, including India. So they're recording, they're annotating, then they're feeding that back into Amazon software for training purposes. The goal was to improve the speech comprehension, essentially in the voice assistant. And when you bought one of these things, it was listening, it was training, and they were letting humans listen to your interactions with their units. In 2020, they fired several employees for sharing sensitive customer data with third parties, including email addresses and phone numbers, I presume for profit. So their back end isn't necessarily that secure. It's retroactive finding this as opposed to a full-blown data loss prevention system. And according to Amazon's July 2021 quarterly report, they were found in violation of the EU's data privacy laws known as GDPR, and were fined a record at the time $883 million for violating essentially the privacy of U.S. citizens. In June of 2023, they agreed to pay $31 million in penalties to settle privacy violations related to the Amazon Echo voice assistant and Ring doorbell cameras for violating your privacy as well. And on and on and on and on until today. Now, we've got an article by Sky Jacobs of TechSpot that has a nice, concise write-up on this, and I think I used one of her articles the other day as well, but quite frankly, she's pretty good at being concise, because now Amazon is facing a class action lawsuit alleging that it secretly collected and sold sensitive location data from millions of California residents through its Amazon Ads Software Development Kit, or SDK. And quite frankly, this is only going on in California. California has their own GDPR known as CCPA, but if it's happening in California, it's happening across the United States. California is just leading the charge. This case, though, highlights the growing concerns over data privacy and the use of SDKs in mobile applications. Not just Amazon, but Google's got an SDK, Facebook has an SDK, and we'll talk about that shortly. Now, the lawsuit was filed in the U.S. District Court by Felix Kotalinski of San Mateo, California, and he claims that Amazon obtained backdoor access to consumers' devices by distributing the Amazon Ads SDK to thousands of mobile app developers who then embed it into their application. And that's literally how SDKs work. You're on basically you're publishing to the App Store or you're publishing to Google Play for iPhone or Android respectively, and you're integrating these. And if you're asking, well, why would a developer integrate an Amazon Ads or Facebook Ads or Google Ads or Alibaba or any one of them? It's because those ads that you see as you're playing these freemium games, in other words, it's free to play, but you're sitting through ads, essentially the developers make money. That's why games are free. They're actually generating revenues. They get 1 billion people to download this and 1 billion people are watching ads. They're making serious cash. Now, the software allegedly allowed Amazon to harvest vast amounts of timestamp geolocation data without your knowledge or consent. And Kotalinski also claims that Amazon accessed his personal data through the Speed Test by Ookla app, which, quite frankly, the nerds of the world usually have. I think I've got that one on my phone on a regular basis because it gives me the ability to test wireless networks, the speed I'm getting. Oh, is my internet at home slow today? I can pop it up on the wireless or I can physically plug in, but Speed Test is a very common app in the IT and cybersecurity community. Now, the complaint alleges that the collected data reveals where consumers live, work, shop, visit, and potentially expose sensitive information such as religious affiliation, sexual orientations, and medical conditions. And yeah, I mean, if you're pinging home and they're getting your GPS locations and every other Thursday at 2 p.m. you're reporting to a hospital, something ain't right unless you're working there, right? So this is what they're talking about. Now, the lawsuit also contends that Amazon used this data to create detailed profiles on consumers for advertising purposes. These actions violate California's penal code and state laws against unauthorized computer access. So he's going beyond GDPR. He's going after them criminally. Now, this case aligns with similar legal actions against other tech companies and data brokers regarding usage in SDKs. Obviously, I mentioned Facebook and Google. Allstate was caught essentially with an SDK that could track the speed in your car if you had car insurance from them. That's not good. And a whole bunch of others. Twilio had one, et cetera, et cetera. But this is, I think, one of the big issues that we have is we are basically being fingerprinted and data mined. And if you think it starts and stops with the Amazon Echoes and Ring doorbells of the world, if you have an entire smart home run by this, they are getting a lot of fingerprinting on you. Let's say you basically go to bed at 10 o'clock and you're telling your Echo to turn off all the lights and you're waking up at 6 and you're telling it to turn on all the lights. It starts to understand the patterns of how you behave. And by virtue of that, this is what we're talking about. Like maybe you get up or your partner gets up at 2 a.m. to have a snack, whatever it is. And, basically they tell the Echo to turn on the light and here we are. All of this is basically recording. They are hoovering up an enormous amount of data on us. And quite frankly, this is something that we really need to understand. We need to address, and we really need to make sure that we are private. So I don't have any kind of Amazon Echoes or smart assistants, for example, in my home, primarily because nobody needs to listen to what I'm saying, right? It's bad enough I've got my phone, and if I have to have sensitive conversations, I leave my phone in the other room, right? On top of it, I try to minimize my footprint of apps. I don't collect apps. I don't keep apps long on my phone, and I'm constantly reviewing it, usually about once a week, once every 2 weeks or so. And if I'm not using an app, I just remove it. Not to mention, I'm checking all my permissions on my apps. Does this app really need GPS locations, et cetera, et cetera? We've seen some apps like the TikTok app, for example, attempt to evade, or obfuscate through permissions to do whatever it wants. So heads up, it's not a foolproof thing. You can also use VPNs or virtual private networks. There's a lot of different things that you can do to try to obfuscate yourself. But the point is, if you're shopping at Amazon, you're using Amazon products, you're going to get data mined in the same way that you're going to get data mined if you're using Facebook, Google, TikTok, Temu, take your pick. The other side of it is where the data goes, right? I would much rather, if I have to be data mined, have my data reside within the United States because I have legal recourse under this jurisdiction compared to, let's say, my data going to China. Try suing Beijing, which is something I've said multiple times, but nobody listens. So with that, I'll leave it at that, but you can't say you haven't been told when it comes to Amazon, and here we are. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at Nick AESP, and I'll see you next time.